because I used to start a business in software, and I used to join a lot of sound community, and I see software is somehow so common to represent a lot of people. When you look back into our strong question to system is we need the system, we need to focus on how we have the implementation more. And aerospace, something the backbone of Americans that I see that we are, our nation is the leading nation in space exploration. I have some ideas in aerospace, and I really want to join aerospace working north to south this yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And so if we look around the room, we have rocket engineers, software engineers, entrepreneurs, and finance, and the whole group, right? And so that's really what this is all about. Like I say, typically the room is full, and so we have a little bit more collaboration moving forward, okay? Now, the first month, we broke this open, and we started talking a lot of what we were talking earlier. You know, what are CIBRs, what are STTRs? Everybody in the room here probably is well aware what CIBRs are, what the government is looking for. At the point in time, I brought up the NASA 2025 list of, I think it ended 10th of March, of what they were looking for as far as inputs. And in of that was a lot of avionics, a lot of navigation, a lot of advanced air mobility details that obviously we're looking to expand, right? And so the original program was put together here so that I could look at, from advanced air mobility standpoint, to the Skyway to Mars, because the big conversation obviously is we're going to space, right? We're going to do lunar inhabitation. We've been talking about that for a day, okay? The big push this year with the new president and the administration is, we're going to Mars, okay? That's been a big headliner. So in order to do that, like what you speak of with SWIFT and some of the training evolutions, I also run a nonprofit called Brilliant Aeronautical Programs that I take from Corpus Christi to San Antonio. Haven't done as much up here in Austin because Austin is probably tuned in at a whole different level of time, okay, when we talk about time and we talk about technology. So I think there is a lot of outlying areas where the educational systems, whether it's electricity or avionics or propulsion systems, all of that, needs to be explored a little bit more in territories as we're looking at the growth of things like AI and the technological advances that are going on so fast. A lot of smaller communities can't even understand it yet, right? Governments, educational systems, or industries, right? It's just moving so fast. And so a lot of us have to venture into territories and help them understand that the world's turning and you're missing the turn. And so as I look at it, that's where we're going. Now the second month, obviously, one of the things I brought up, our meeting happened right after an airliner flew into a Black Hawk helicopter. Having several thousand hours in a Black Hawk helicopter, I'm asking that very question. How the hell does that happen today? How do we avoid that tomorrow, right? And we find out things like, well, the transponder system on the helicopter was shut off and we're night vision goggles, and the airline didn't pick up on it, so the traffic collision avoidance system wasn't queued, and a lot of various different factors, right? You guys are all welcome to sit down at any point in time, right? I'm going to ride home, and so I'll stand for a while. And so in that conversation, as we looked at the avionics systems that are on there, the weight of the old antiquated computer systems to do traffic collision avoidance systems, the new advents of software, the AI integration points. Thank you for leading that. we start to look at, okay, the future of avionics improvements is wide and vast, right? Economically, there's a ton of opportunity for us to kick off a new business entity of any kind, whether it's a new communication system, a new transponder system, and quite clearly, who has a Apple phone? Yeah, and so like the Apple people all know that they can literally see other Apple people instantaneously, and networks like why aircraft fly into each other doesn't make any sense, with the exception of we aren't doing enough fast enough, right? We have barriers with bureaucracy, and we have barriers with collaboration and finding the like-minded people to then spark into an idea that can draw funding, right? And so that's kind of where we were last month. And so bringing it from the Mars point down to Earth today, because the big selling point obviously is space and advanced air mobility. And we were talking earlier, when we say advanced air mobility, I mean that's kind of a broad spectrum, right? Right? What's your view on advanced air mobility? What is that to you and to you and to you, right? We say drones, and we say personal aerial transport, and we say all kinds of things, right? But we really are looking at the category of new aviation on Earth, right? And that's what that is, whether it's moving cargo or whether it's moving people. It's really what we're doing here on the planet, right? And so what are the factors of that we're not doing enough fast enough with? Anybody have any inputs on that? But how do we do advanced air mobility here on Earth faster?
Regulations are what slows it down.
Oh my God. Oh my God, yeah. Regulations are the big one, right? I mean, all day long we have to have the book on it, though innovation typically leads regulation, right? And so the bureaucracy, and what I'm looking at myself, and kind of the conversation we had earlier, is we're watching other countries doing it faster, right? One of the motivating things 9 months ago when I first started thinking about holding this type of event was it was going to be in San Antonio, where Capital Factory is, because it's closer. And of course, down there we have Port of San Antonio, which has vision that I haven't really seen until I came up here, okay? I wasn't up here yet. And so, in part of all of that, I was really not happy that I'm watching China move EHong and sky taxis globally. And here in the state of Texas, in Austin, in the old days, I was tracking with Uber Elevate. How many of you remember Uber Elevate? You went to the Uber Elevate symposiums, and we were talking about it, and Dallas was going to be the first sky taxi hub, and the mayor was on board, and when Uber Elevate was purchased up and moved out, it really died away, right? I hadn't heard as much in America. And so I was like, well, I think it's Joby. Okay? No, Kitty Hawk, and I think it's Joby. Okay? I think it all moved that way,
Well,
right?
Mark Moore left, and the Archer guy, whatever his name is, I can't remember it. They split off. Because I did a project with them in the fourth quarter of 2019.
Okay.
A drone project with Uber Elevate.
Yeah.
And then it was done at the end of the year.
Okay.
It was done at the end of December. We were the last money they spent.
Yeah. And that's the key word right there, right? Money. Okay?
Yeah, I was about to say,
That-
that would be mine.
No, that was the key. I mean, that's where Uber was, and Uber could see taking the taxi business into the sky, okay? And I get that. Now, who in here has certified an aircraft? Yeah?
Been through the process.
Yeah? No? Rocket.
I've been next to people that have had to certify them.
Ah.
But candidly, fuck that noise.
I love that. I love that statement.
I'm not dealing with
That no, and that's a hair. You lose hair with that
You
one.
do.
Yeah, you do.
It's the FAA, and I say this with love, but fuck the FAA. God,
No,
it's so hard to do anything.
we're not doing fast enough to change that. I agree with you 100%. And so
Like the FAA is built for a world in which very large aircraft that are extremely
most crowded skies in the world.
Indeed, sure it is, right? So, but again,
You see both sides, though.
Sure.
Well, I can't. I can't. I ride a motorcycle. The statistical probability of me dying today is high. And why we have to spend so much money and so much time to do it in the sky makes no sense to me.
I'm with him.
Okay? Makes no sense.
No, I
Okay?
get it.
I'm okay with people dying. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay? The economic, let's just say national security requires us to do more faster technologically.
Bureaucrats don't have any incentive to take risks.
Correct. And that becomes part of my big issue, right? If we look at the economic model globally and the technological growth, the trend analysis shows that it was in the automotive industry, okay? And that grew, and now I'll go back to my statement of why. As I watch EHONG fielding globally, if they dominate the advanced air mobility corridor with transportation, then we will lose that economic model. Now, I'm hearing legislation talk that we're not going to allow their EHONG aircraft in the country, but if it's allowed globally, what good will that do? Okay, and so that's kind of my thought. You know, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
South
Your
America-
thoughts.
South America loves China.
Yes,
Europe is not unhappy with China.
right.
And I've worked in virtually all the countries in Europe, and they do business with China. They don't do it as publicly as some people think, but they do business with China.
We've been doing business with China for a long time. We have a lot of companies that are, have gotten rich from us doing business there. And we sold out a lot of our,
That iPhone IP came from. They got from Europe,
Well, I'm not sure what your point is.
or just like America has done a lot of business with China. I do think the Western world is waking up. The Chinese model worked well. We got Japan on board by handing them automotive IP.
right.
That's what we did. We
No,
surrendered
that's a
IP,
fact, yeah.
And we politicians gave money to American car manufacturers to make cars in Japan in full knowledge that those factories would ultimately result in IP transfer, and that then they would start making cars, and now you have Honda, Hyundai. We did it in South Korea, and now you have, again,
Correct.
chip manufacturers. That was the model.
Yes.
Give Asia IP. Some people get very rich off of that IP. The people that get very rich prevent rebellions in those countries through the virtue of the money.
Yes,
That was the whole concept after World War II. Make World War III too expensive to rich people, and the elites themselves will prevent it. China, though, with its 400-year plan, fell
Right.
none of that, stole everything. Communists did, and they kind of played us. I mean, honestly, good for them. Like,
I wouldn't put it on them. I would put it on us. I would put it on
they played us, right?
exactly the reason why a guy like me doesn't just go play golf. He plays in politics. He plays in aerospace. Because I'm seeing we're not doing enough. That's the big issue.
And so I guess my point is like China got all of its communications tech from the US. We were leaders.
And they stole most of it.
Oh yeah, indeed they did.
Oh, we gave them most of it.
I gave it to them.
Gave it to them. I co-founded a company in China. I've worked with them for 2 years, and it was a horrible, horrible experience. The IP was stolen in a week and a half after my partner and I started the company. And
That's the law.
so that's very sophisticated. You remember, Japan did a similar thing in their early days in order to get a little bit of a head start on technology. And then they became self-sufficient. And China is becoming self-sufficient.
Oh, more than that. Absolutely.
Yeah, becoming-
Way more than that. No, I was just watching the video on their next generation 6 fighter jet, which we're not at yet. I just saw a video on their stealth frigate, which we're not at yet.
But did you see the one today about the battery technology, the charging
Oh yeah, the
technology?
5-minute you
like triple
Right.
what Tesla can do.
That's what
Exactly.
you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it goes back into the question, how do we fix it? How do we do more faster, right? How do,
To talk about it a lot and have some commitments.
right? And put more on the action list, right? And so as I understand, the more we have on our action list, the more we're going to dominate, right? No, absolutely not. And so, and this is the arena though. This is the arena. It's those of us in the room that are taking our time to try to collaborate, to grow more, to learn more, to see how we can compete globally, right? That's where I'm at. And so, with that, I talked briefly about the production rate that we're looking at with Joby, Archer, Vertical, EHong, and specifically, these are their forecasts, a couple hundred aircraft as we look in the next year, next 2 years, right? And so it's kind of minuscule, especially when we're looking at the specifics of how many aircraft we have in the United States of America and how many automobiles, right? And so this is really the advanced air mobility. When I talk about that in America, it's that middle ground between the general airline, military aviation that we have today and the automotive industry that we have today, right? And so as we know, as we're talking about battery charging is moving faster, as we know the propulsion systems, the transitional stuff, we should be able to get more like minds. And I entertain that next month, maybe in April, we have more people and we start talking about more collaborative effort, right, on putting these businesses together. Because that middle ground between aviation today in the United States of America and the automotive industry is literally where we're going to lose globally. And we can put our sights on Mars, and we can focus all our attention to dominating the moon. But if we don't hit that economic model right there, the people won't eat, the country will be stagnant technologically, and our educational systems will suffer, okay? And so all of what we know historically and what built those 300 million cars is where we need to be thinking more, I think, and that's my opinion, in the advanced air mobility. What do y'all think? I mean, obviously we're involved in SWIFT, which is education so that we can teach people about rockets. But before rockets, before space, I mean, they've got to know how to operate a computer. They've got to know how to operate that aircraft in front of me, right? How to work on something as simple as Joby aircraft. And what do you see in Joby's aircraft?
That is an octopus. That is not an airplane.
So what's different between that and a helicopter?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rotors.
Right? And we only have 2 on a Black Hawk, right? Yeah, 2. Okay? And so the price tag, 1.3 million. If we look at the airspeed, relatively speaking, the Black Hawk flies just as fast. If we talk about anything about this particular thing, which is vertical lift, forward flight, I'm going to get there. Okay, I'm going to get there. No, I appreciate that. So the point I'm trying to make is the leader, and there's the news, Virgin, right? The leader, and I can pull up the news articles as well, but I really don't want to pull through all of that. I just want to have some education and conversation about the aircraft right now that are dominating the advanced air mobility market, right? That's electric. Okay, so that is electric. It's not even hybrid, okay? It is electric, okay? Is there opportunity to put a hybrid engine and make its own electricity? Sure. Modifications, right? How many has it sold? How many are fielded? Is it IFR certified? No, it's not, okay? And so when we talk about the plan of sky taxis, we're a distance away. And so I do want to bring up this for a moment, or maybe not, because you know how I am with computers.
You can go back to it, you didn't open it.
Huh?
Go back to the link you want to open.
This is what I want to look at. Okay, so if we look at specifically the Archer plan of Sky Taxi, which they put out some time ago, it's from a couple of small cities in and about, right? And so what I'm trying to get to is, okay, I brought up Archer for a reason. Archer is a competitor of Joby, right? And so they all have some plans of action of how they're going to sky taxi, right? How are they going to use these aircraft? What does that require? Now, this is the avionics mind in me, right? Coming from last month, talking about transponders, collision avoidance systems, all of that. And so we have an aircraft, and both of these aircraft are not IFR. Anybody know what IFR means? Okay, that's right. Yeah, I got one. Instrument flight regs. Okay, so instrument flight rules, capability. If you're driving your car and it gets foggy, well, good luck, right? Slow down, you know? Right. And so if you're in the sky and it gets foggy, what do? You have to rely on your instruments, right? And you have to be qualified to fly just instruments. And it has to have the ability to land somewhere on instruments, right? And we oftentimes talk about GPS systems, right? Which, by the way, I love GPS. And the reason why I love GPS is it literally made everything possible when we put it on the phone. It made it to where they could deliver food right here, okay? It made it to where we could have a cab show up right here, right? And so I was involved when we put GPS on airplanes, right? And so that's great, but when it comes to the regulations now, how are we going to land an airplane like that with any kind of system? So we talked about the 200 numbers, and this is what I wanted to bring up. And we've got plans on using it in America's sky taxis, but there's so much of a gap of what has to be done with navigational systems, with the certification processes, that it just becomes more and more of a challenge. And so I'm going to get to the Archer aircraft, right? And so there's the Archer aircraft, $5 million, okay? There's the speeds. Archer and Joby are the top two, right? These are the top two forecasted advanced air mobility American-made products that we have. The very top two. And so we're some distance away, right? We're talking still a lot of money. We're talking multi-rotor, tilt rotors, forward flight. If you look at the speed, now this one's got 12 electric motors, right? And so I'm kind of asking the question, is this really where we're going with transportation? What's your thoughts?
I mean, y'all do have cars with 18 wheels.
Cars with 18 wheels. But that's for weight, right? So we can carry more weight, right? If I look at Sikorsky's Sea Stallion, the heavy lift H-53, it's still only got 2 rotors and carries heavy lift, right? And so, $5 million. 3.9 for the F-80 on the ground, okay? So what's the big delta that we're looking at? What's the big gap? And so to me, as I look at all of this, it's infrastructure, right? That's my whole thought. And there's your $5.9 million Black Hawk. Now that's a stripped out version. Holds 2 people, bunch of troops, weight characteristics. Of course, he's had that out for a long time. I'm Navy. I flew the Seahawk. I worked the Army Black Hawks down in Corpus Christi Army Depot. So I fielded them for about 10 years as well as an engineer. As well as the Border Patrol and the Air Force version of the Hawk. So it's been around a long time. Replaced the old Hueys. Modern day technology. Would I put Joby's aircraft or Archer's aircraft up against that Hawk? Probably not. Okay, reliability, the amount of cargo I can transport, and key things like, you know, what's the dimensional characteristics of it? You know, 64 foot in length isn't much different than those advanced air mobility aircraft that we're looking at right now with Joby and Archer. The overlying technology, which was the big push, is electric. Okay, electric aircraft have been around a long time, long time. And so I bring this to the point that I think there's still a lot we can do better, right? I'm going to go back a second, and now I want to talk about, if I have it here, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it, no. I was looking for, and I had it up, what EHONG is doing in Dubai. Yeah, I must have lost it. But one of the biggest things that concerns me is how fast Dubai is moving forward with advanced air mobility with another company, right? Now, I did want to bring attention on a lighter note. We brought back our astronauts, okay? So advanced air mobility to space and beyond and all that stuff that we're talking about. But how long did it take to do that, right? And the why of that, okay? What was the why of why those astronauts were stuck out there? Talk about that. Talk about it a minute. By who? Oh my God, my stock. You're killing me. You're killing me by saying that out loud.
Boeing's a problem, but then you also have collaboration between Boeing and you have incentivization structure where Boeing's going against Airbus. So now it's US versus Europe. It becomes a problem because now you have incentives on both sides for the American FAA to preference Boeing. See, doors falling off planes, and then you also have deeper narratives of non-technical people running companies like Boeing with no knowledge. Like you can always take Q&A away on a hardware company, and that works well until you got nothing. On Twitter, you can pull all your Q&A out and then put it back. On hardware, you can't do that. And so you just have this very large problem where you're running U.S. national security interests like their Twitter, and those are very different. But not that Twitter isn't the U.S. national security interest, but you just have this enormous problem. So you have an old space company that's coming at things from a very institutional place for the space market, which is actually very rapidly evolving in this new space domain, and then they're trying to launch aircraft like the NASA. It's like worst of both worlds. You're trying to be the FAA and launch aircraft like your NASA, and you're married to this very institutional way of building things, and modern new space is not that. Which is why SpaceX rescued those astronauts, a company with none of the heritage of Boeing, which should have been the other way around, candidly, but somehow, I don't know, we sacrificed that to the shelf, I guess. I don't really know.
You agree? Anybody worked for Boeing before?
I thought it was because they stuck up there because they want to get fired since they landed today.
Yeah, you can't land, you can't be fired.
Right.
That's pretty cute.
Doge can't get you in space.
I like that. Yeah, no, you're right, yeah. No, I got that. Anybody worked for Boeing? No? Anybody work for an aerospace company?
Probably having a Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed Martin? How long ago?
Lee, who asked me out, 2010.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I worked for Lockheed Martin about 2014. And so, yeah. The big issue to me, and I'm just going to say that, is that once you're used to taking money and everything, you have to spend that amount of money every time, you know? And so I look at these big companies, and I think that Boeing wasn't incentivized to go get anybody, right? To where we look at SpaceX and they're incentivized, right? They have a whole different mindset of, well, if I am the biggest aircraft company, the biggest military company, the biggest space company in America, well, hell, I can't fail, right? I've worked for Boeing, okay? I left Boeing because of that, okay? Because they specifically think they can't fail. And to some degree, I thought you were gone.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, a deja vu.
I made it around the corner and then it was cold.
Oh,
I came back and I was like,
gotcha.
have a good night.
We'll see you next time. The incentive for us, I don't think big leadership there, especially the old CEO, that wasn't of technical mind. We've allowed, and having been there and watched program managers try to manage engineers, somehow the cart flipped, right? And it's not even a logical sequence anymore. And so you ask yourself, after this delay and after that delay, after the next delay, who is even in charge? You know, and that's the culture of Boeing, right? And it's unfortunate because there's so much depending on it. Now, I bring that up. Who does the word of the day? Nobody? Good. And so there's always a word of the day that I have to play, part of the ritual that I do in the family, right? Is we've got to pick the word of the day, right? Got 5 letters, and what is the word of the day? When we kicked off this thing, right, I said, this is going to be spark, so we can bring oxygen and so we can bring fuel and make businesses grow. Well, the word of the day was spark today. And I'm like, well, maybe I can get somebody to spark an idea of how we can compete against the Boeings as American companies and elevate it as expeditiously as possible. Understanding that we've got bureaucracy and we've got FAA and we've got all that crap, but it's going to take a collaborative effort to win. And I see so much opportunity when I look at these advanced air mobility platforms because we're not filling those gaps yet, okay? And we're not doing it fast enough yet. And they're really not going to replace things like the Black Hawk. Which leads me to the infrastructure piece, right? I've mentioned before that we see the advanced air mobility starting to blossom with skyports and thoughts of that. That's the one that they talk about down in San Antonio, right? What good is advanced air mobility today? I mean, these aircrafts are there. Where are they going to fly? How do you want to use it?
Yeah, you can't fly one anywhere near a building in downtown Austin, so I can't fly any mobility vehicle anywhere near a place I can actually.
So how are we going to use it?
Well, the impetus for all of these is reducing traffic congestion.
Okay. Well, Southwest takes me from Austin to San Antonio.
Right? That's,
I was going to say, in an NSIC call, there was a company, there's stuff being done at out of North Texas, and I'd have to go looking it up on my phone, but, you know, a company came in and had a 30-minute discussion in that group that I talked about earlier. And they were talking about that, getting to Houston, to Austin, and, you know, that whole.
Right, but we have airlines that are doing that today. Yeah,
I thought the ultimate dream is to get maybe not a super rich, maybe medium rich person who works downtown, VP director level, to fly from his office downtown to their backyard out in the country.
okay, and I like that, but I would go with the super rich, right? Who are the first automobile owners?
I would go, this is a last mile problem, right?
Yeah.
So how do you solve the fact that a million people want to be in downtown Austin, right, on one road? You don't solve that problem. You may go back to where you want, it doesn't matter. You make why do more people go? That's what
Look
happened.
at Houston.
Right, look at Houston.
How many more lanes can you
Have
have?
you ever seen an 8-lane parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But air mobility solves that problem. Because
Yes.
I don't have one lane anymore, and that lane is also three-dimensional. So
Not,
in my mind, air mobility isn't about going city to city. It's a replacement for a subway.
okay, and so, and I'm not gonna be the guy arguing that, where do we put it?
In the sky above the
How do we do it? Tell,
you put it in all the places no one wants to fly it.
where, what, so where, how do we, if we had Joby today in Austin, where do you want to go?
On my house.
Rooftops, okay. Which ones? Now I'm going to back up a little bit, okay, because I led in with IFR, right? I led in with navigational systems, right? Because it's one thing for us to look at the delta between 12 electric blades and 2 on a helicopter, right? And so the real difference to me right now isn't in the aircraft, it's really in the logistical support that's there, okay? It's in where do I set the damn thing down? At the hospital? Yeah, well, they've got a landing pad, sure, right? But rich or medium rich, because the first entity of people will have to land somewhere, what's going to be your given choice? If each and every one of you were that rich person today, where do you want to go? And that's for a reason that I ask. Where do we want to build it, right? Where do we want to invest in it? Where do we want to put that navigational system? Where do we want to have the new app take us here and there, right? And so where is that? I'm listening. I want your feedback.
To the airport.
Well, I mean, we can already go to the airport.
So having this aircraft, which is large as a helicopter, land in your backyard is really a pipe dream for a long time in the future. Number one, because we've got helicopters today that you could use that for, but they're not capable for regulatory reasons, for costs, for all kinds of safety and everything. So that's a challenge. So you've got to go, like, as you said, skyports, which is again a challenge because it's just like an airport. It's infrastructure requiring parking, requiring traffic to get to it, get back to it. I wrote an article on this recently, and I looked up the fact that most metropolitan areas, traffic is increasing by 1% a year. If you look up LA, you look up Dallas, you look up Fort Worth, you look up London, your traffic is increasing by 1% a year. And to offset that 1% with an aircraft is a very huge challenge because of the limited number of seats even on one of the aircraft. So it is not apparent where the AAM is going to alleviate the very thing that was the impetus for developing them, which it was not only the impetus for reducing traffic or congestion, but it was also save the planet, which has now become a little less of an emphasis globally, right? So the impetus for Archer coming out of Uber Elevate was we're going to do just like we did with taxis, and we're going to save the planet. Well, you know, current administration is not even the least bit interested in that. Europe, Germany, and Spain, and Portugal, and some of those countries are already backing away from those mandates. Canada's backing away. So it's a big challenge, and I think there's going to be a lot of these guys go bankrupt over the next few years until that settles down and it becomes much more of a reality of what they can be used for. We're not even close to that now. Even though I'm pro eVTOLs and I've been in that space for 8 years, I've seen, again, the challenges with all of these guys and what they're facing and what is on their plate right now. And it's formidable.
I agree with you. But,
Just to try on that though, is it, it's a genuine question, but you are the person to answer it. So is that a technical limitation or is that a brand limitation? The fact that I can't find that VTOL in my back garden beyond physical clearance of my
It's just like bringing a helicopter into your backyard. It's
Right.
regulatory, safety.
It's not that I couldn't technically do it, it's that my neighbors.
Well,
Right.
there's a guy out here that.
Well, that comes right to the FAA, right?
There's several rich guys here in Austin that fly the small Robinson two-man helicopters. And it's because they have money and they go back and forth, but they can't take that Robinson helicopter and land anywhere they want in downtown Austin. And they can land it at their ranch because they have a private ranch with a helipad, right? Or, a field or wherever they want to land it.
But that just sort of links back to your point, right, about people in other countries doing what they want because they can do what they want. And are we self-limiting by over-regulating?
But again, you go back to, in China, you have a dictator that basically says, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to channel government money and subsidies to build 1,000 vertiports, and we're going to make this happen hell or high water. You don't have a choice if you don't like it. Here we don't have that same kind of an environment. We have bureaucracies, we have politics, we have regulations and things which don't allow that kind of.
See, that's sort of my point.
okay, so I'm going to pull it in a little bit. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I want to say something after you finish.
Oh, we're in the middle. Go ahead.
Yeah, so from what I see that the helicopter that you show on the slide is the latest one without any wheel drive at all. But nowadays I see there's a lot of countries they start to build the flexible version between the car and the helicopter.
Right.
They mix it together. They can take off whenever they drive.
Sure.
They just drop by some place. They can, first of all, they can take off but after a few minutes of ignition.
Right.
So it's very convenient because now every city has a lot of street. The only one thing is that maybe the government in the future can spend some more place in the street to make sure that we have available space for land.
No, and I like that idea. And we've seen communities build up around airports, right? I mean, airport communities where they build their landing strip in the houses and whatnot around that, right? And so if we're here in Austin today, where would we want to build one?
So I agree with Mr. Everly, on that Class G, 700 to 1600. Once you get up in the air, okay, but
Yep.
this high. We listened to Matt Jason over at Lyft Aircraft talk about this. And the first 10 years talking about the drone. We spent the last 3 years, 4 years talking about the hops.
Yep.
15 to 20 minutes. He's got a grid laid out with buildings where he's got access to.
To land, yep.
The land, if this changes or that changes.
Right.
It's not solid till it gets anchored also
Right.
there, and then you can have that like protected zone of land, so if something doesn't come in, like we're working on building next work.
Right.
Yeah, there's a developer building Greenpoint. If you Google Greenpoint, it's northeast of Austin, and he's building a community around a private airport. And he's
Yeah, and there are several of those.
one of the
Yeah.
first developers to do that.
Yeah. And so, other than that, where else would we be? Where would we fly these, right? Anyway, by the way, book, Advanced Air Mobility in Space. Let's build my book. Talk articles all day long. I figured I'd promote that real quick. It's on Amazon. So that becomes part of the thing, right? As I look at Skyport here, down in San Antonio and their vision, understand that's at an airport, right? It is literally at an old Air Force base that has been converted into what we call Port of San Antonio. And of course, we're going to throw a lot of money at building a location to fly advanced air mobility, right? Now, where are you going to be able to go? Well, airport to airport to airport to airport. Economically, I think we need to be looking at that future vision of where that's going to go and how we're going to build that. So we can talk about the growth of the aircraft all day long, but, you know, to me, the next iteration is where do we park? How do we continue to grow that entire ecosystem once all of the players start producing at a rate? You know, when I was talking about 300 million cars at a rate that can be in between the current aviation and the automotive industry, okay? The money, to me, is nothing compared to the money we spend in the infrastructure on the ground today. For us to develop the navigational systems, to have our 10 lanes vertical and our 10 lanes horizontal with airflow within a certain range of airspace, I think those are all simplistic. I think the next aspect is beyond the aircraft, what is the logistic plan, right? And that's why, you know, I like looking hard at EHong's plan with Dubai, at Joby's plan and Archer's plan with whether it's San Francisco or somewhere in Europe, because then it takes me to the roots of Texas, right? Then it takes me to, all I need is one location like that, downtown Austin, that can do the flow of cars and air and merge those, right? I was looking at a site, and I'll just share. There's a site in Kansas City, Missouri, where Interstate 35 crosses here, and the river's there, and the train tracks are right here. And I'm like, this is an ideal spot to transition everybody from the sky to the ground and move out. Now, then that moves into not just the navigational systems, right? But what else?
Last mile transit?
Say again.
Last mile transit? Or are you thinking of something else?
Well, I am thinking of something else, but I want to hear what you're thinking because this is our group, right? And so what do you mean by that?
I'm thinking if you have a spot where you're landing these things, what you're worried about then is getting people from that hub to wherever they want to go. Because you can't land in backyards, or maybe you have a
Correct.
neighborhood landing pad.
Correct.
But,
And that's what he was saying, is we have, yeah, all of a sudden we open up this circle drive area and boom, that's where we land, right? Okay? And so that's perfect, right? And so what I want to get to as I'm getting closer.
We have a 4-hour drive.
Now y'all be safe. Y'all be safe. Take care. Is specifics about landing, right? And I'm leading it in that direction because we can talk about the aircraft and we can talk about the navigation systems and we can talk about the logistic plan. And I bring up a ship for a reason because I've landed on a ship many a time. And if you look at that ship, what do you see? Marks, right? Specifically spoken to the individual that's flying it, right? Not necessarily to the electronic systems, to the navigational systems, right? Is there a antenna somewhere? Sure, okay. Is there typically a GPS coordinates on the back of a ship? Not broadcasted, right? Because that would be another problem when we talk dual use, okay? Now it becomes a location for weapon attacks, right? But as we look at the back of a ship, where we're going to land a helicopter and we're going to talk about advanced air mobility and it's going to land, right? We have, as we started this whole conversation, bureaucracy moving in. And I don't mean to say that in a bad sense, okay? But How do we know how much weight, what the dangers are, right? We can land anywhere if we have to, right? But do we know if it's a safe landing zone? What's the weight of our vehicle? What are the marking requirements? Where do we line up? All of those kind of things. And I only brought the ship up because the ship becomes more complex. The dual use aspects of things become more complex, right? As we're talking about advanced air mobility and as we're starting to field more and more of those aircraft. Which takes me away for a moment, because typically Emily is here. And Emily was recently published in the Advanced Air Mobility Today, and she works for the Department of Transportation, the Texas Department of Transportation. And in of such, when we look at vertiports versus heliports, the markings, and I just want to bring it to your attention for a reason. As we talked about months ago, advanced air mobility to space, and we talked about Mars, and as we talked about navigational systems last month, today I want us to focus on the aircraft, the logistics, and then what legislation. Can I land on that or can I not land on that? And that becomes a question. And it's not just a GPS question. Now, in the article that Emily, you've been here before, so you've met Emily. She usually sits here or there. Anyway, there is a link that I can't get to now. I'll be done. Retry. Well, she took it off. But she has a link that shows that legislation. And it's not going to show up. And so I would ask that you look into that. And if Emily is here next time, we'll bring that up. And so from there, of course, my number one concern is that we do more faster so that we can promote what I think is the range of technical growth, transportation growth, environmental growth, military growth. And there's so much opportunity for us to do that, that this is the room for it. Thoughts on this meetup? And of course, those of you that were late, let's make sure we intermingle and tie together so we can look at how we're going to grow businesses. Got new software engineers here, got experienced aviation players here, and this is a smaller room than you guys are used to. What do you got for me? All,
those in high school starting at freshman in engineering course and sophomore as electives.
what?
That sophomore, junior, senior, they do aircraft maintenance and build everything. It's called FRC and new tech build.
What school?
Georgetown High School.
Georgetown. And so is the focus around general aviation, military aviation, airlines, or advanced air mobility?
So for our part, I think we're not really focused on anything. We're focused on just building everything we're not looking at.
General aviation.
Yeah.
So the building of it structurally or electronically? Or,
Rivets, everything. Start with rivets.
so the structure of it.
And they're getting more electronics.
We get the electronics couple of those September, build that you go, we're all building up from the ground up.
Framing.
Yeah. Man, that's fantastic. Yeah, so are you playing with the different types of metals, metallurgy stuff?
So a lot of time that's what the first model.
They taught us how to do riveting and everything, and then they
Yeah.
say, all right, you understand riveting, let's learn how to do filing and everything, doing all that, and then we get it right to later.
So are you looking at the FAA's web page for the AMP requirements and things of that nature as well? Are you? Okay, so they're teaching to that?
They're not teaching
Are they teaching any of the Part 107?
Brand new, so they haven't really done much.
No, and that's why I'm intrigued with it. Okay,
We do a little bit of wiring electronics,
We did wire and all that in the last class.
they got any components ready, or anything out, readings,
No,
make sure something's up, troubleshooting.
not yet, right?
He's got one, this is the first year of this, he's got one more year of this.
And that's part of a high school program.
Like what we used to call electives. When we were there.
Well, back when we were there, we did engine mechanics and wood shop and all of that, and to bring in aviation to it, I think it's a genius program. Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to make sure that rich guy, whoever said it, rich guy.
Yeah.
The airport.
Well,
and the school
the-
does, so they have a different part of the FRC. That's near school, but the FRC is like right next to the airport, so it's really well placed.
You go down past the airport main entrance, but very long, you'll see it's like a mixed use college looking building, and it's called.
Yeah, well, I've been up to Georgetown. I worked for an engineering company up there for some time. But, we didn't even get to that part of if in fact we're going to field 300 or 300 million advanced air mobilities, who's going to work on it? Because you can't just land it and take it back off without some sort of a pre-flight and without some sort of an AMP to check the water level in the windscreen or whatever, right? I mean, there has to be some qualification and expectation process. It's not like you can put air in your tire alone anymore. And so that whole aspect of how we're going to service that entire industry becomes a big play. The gentlemen that were here, we were talking about Swift. And what I like about Swift is they're talking about growing the educational plane for space and rockets. Where we don't see as much is how are we really going to grow the service and the work around advanced air mobility? Because we don't have that. And we have key players, but we're not building that. And so I'm glad to hear that. I would like to know more about that and tie in with those folks as well. You know, especially whoever's in charge of that. Have them come on down and talk about it. You know, invite them in. You have my contact, right? Yeah. And so, of course, the biggest thing that we can do is collaborate more, right? Make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email either way. We'll focus, and hopefully in April there'll be a bigger crowd. And what are your goals?
Well, I want to start working on airplanes with next year, so
What kind of work? What kind of airplanes?
just
Service tech, yeah, services. So he's thinking about finishing up here, maybe getting a part-time job.
Yeah.
At the airport, but we're waiting for some technical, a little bit more advance on
I really do
the
want to
mechanics
build
up and wake up.
Say it again.
I want to build that, that's a fun part.
You want to build them,
Yeah.
so you want to be an engineer. Do you want to design them, or do you just want to be the mechanic putting it together? Okay. Well, for now, we'll leave you there in the assembly line.
Wake up. Okay. That's where they're encouraging you to go next. And he's doing a little bit of flying.
That's fantastic. Of course, we've got to be out of here by 7 o'clock. Who needs a voucher? Anybody? Anybody need a parking voucher? Yeah. No? Okay, good. Just in case, if you do, it's $8. Share it with your friends. New software engineer here, just graduated college. So he's booming into it. And you guys were late. Where was the pizza?
We had ours in color.
Did you? Okay. What else can I do for you? Well, let's mingle it up. Yes.
I have another question. I have witnessed the helicopter.
Yeah.
The sound very big. Oh, I mean, it's very loud. And the noise from the helicopter is very loud. Is there anything that you can start?
Yeah, so what noise are you listening to?
So many noises.
Hold on. What noise are you Yes, we're doing a lot of this, right? And so is there room for the business? Sure. Now, if you look at an aircraft that goes in to pick up the Navy SEALs, you think it's gear? Probably not, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there are technologies out there on us. And if you look at the different blades on Joby and Archer, that becomes a part of it as well. They're plating the blades. It's really the, the blades are
So what if I say to you that is a helicopter public transit?
yeah, the big,
The Apple.
yes.
It's very big, to be honest. Yes, I mean, but the noise is very loud.
Yes.
I don't know what it is intentionally like that because it's intentional.
No, it wasn't intentionally that way, I'm sure. But I mean, the more and more you become aware of the environment, so they're allowed motorcycles to pass them all the time.
So I find it in Baltimore, Baltimore Bay Area. The Bay Area.
Baltimore? Where they have quiet restrictions? Yeah, I don't know. Is it? I don't know. Yeah. Well, okay, cool. I wasn't on the figure, I was on the Bradley, I was on the Halliburton, I was on several frigates, yeah. Yeah, it's been a day. You're what? Yeah. You talking about this meetup? Yeah. Wow. This meetup is for us to talk about aviation to space. Because I hadn't seen it. And that's where I, so I was like, talk about whatever. We talk about being engineers, talk about the cyber software, like, education group that's, CKS. I mean, I'm open to it all. Well, right? And, you've been here before.
Just very recent, like at that house at the back.
You were at the house?
Yeah.
You weren't here last month? Oh, you were for very nice.
I'm a comp operator.
That's probably like it.
Yeah, right now I'm very
To me, my recommendation is you grab a couple of people and build something, okay? That's what I
just don't know what I have to.
well, ask him what he wants to build and help him build.
Yeah, what is
You
it?
see what I'm saying? Not true. Not true. You would have to look at any aircraft. Whether it's Piper or it's Craft, Cessna, Deer, I mean, all of those are complicated. And you would have production. Oh, you're absolutely right, because I didn't even talk about how much money it takes to search. Okay? And how many companies I've seen fail. Especially just wrecked a $5 million airplane and killed people. Okay? And then continue.
What did you get, right? Sugar Cheerios, right?
I think it was the first, mobile phone device, right?
Right. Of course, there's, when you look at the automotive industry, it has 300 million just in the United States alone, right? And you look at how long it takes to grow the industry, right? Highways, to get from here to Austin, to get from downtown, I mean, here to San Jose, to get from downtown to the shopping mall on the north side of town, right? Should there be a Carvana landing pad intersections for advanced mobility and ground transportation? Absolutely, right? You know, and so, is the deal then, let's go ask Carvana, hey, you guys would like to be bankrupt? How about we do, you know what I mean?
That's how a lot of the.
Guys, I gotta be out of here by 7 o'clock. Ready? Anybody a Geekdom member, you're welcome to stay. I mean, Capital Factory member. I forgot where it was.
Are you a member?
Yeah, I'm one of the mentors.
Are you having any goals here in
No, we all just finished at the house, remember? Let's do it. What are we waiting on? Hey, I say do it. I say, you know, think about it. And let's do it. Let's pull the trigger. Yeah, don't think so hard. Action, man. Action, man. What's yours? You can have it now. Huh? Huh? Absolutely.
now, but early degree by heart. And then
Time to go, guys. Come down.
you're
Yeah, but that's not my main. Spend more time with them. Good to see you, Bill.
We'll see you next month.
We'll probably
Thanks
connect
for
with
coming
you.
out, man. I appreciate it.
We'll connect with you before and see how we can connect you as instructors.
Yeah, I would love for him to come and, say hi to the group
Okay.
and let's learn that educational process.
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
they're a little bit ahead of the curve in the region.
Yeah, figure out how we can duplicate that, right? Because I think that's what's important. You know what I mean?